Greetings, Ohio Valley. This is Dan Lima with OSU Extension from Belmont County.
And this is Karen Cox from WVU Extension in Ohio County. Thanks for tuning in to Extension Calling, your source for research-based information for the farm, garden, and home. Hey listeners, apologies, but we did have some technical difficulties with this recording. We hope you'll bear with us. We still have a lot of great information to share with you, even if my voice sounds a little wonky later on. If you have any questions about our topics today, please feel free to reach out to me at Karen, Karen, .cox, C-O-X, at mail, M-A-I-L, .wvu.edu.
Hello, Karen.
Hello, Dan.
Welcome to March, and it feels like the beginning of spring.
Actually, it kind of feels like summer, but okay.
That's not what my allergies say.
Yeah, we've got some stuff in bloom for sure. I know all the maples are flowering away, and some of our cherries are starting to go into bloom. So one of the things we wanted to talk about today is, what do these blooms mean as a producer or a homeowner or a grass manager?
Right. Whether you're a homeowner, a farmer, or a gardener, or just interested.
Be a lawn owner, a pasture owner, orchard owner.
Or renter.
Yeah, or someone who's just caring for the place that they're in.
That's
for
right.
Sure.
We can all enjoy it, and the more we know, I think the more we can take advantage of things and the more we can enjoy them. So, yeah, as you can tell, like I feel stuffy, and it feels earlier, but it's hard. It's really hard to gauge. You know, last year, when did allergies start hitting me? It's such a blur, because that's what happens. Everything gets fussy when you have allergies.
We've talked before about those allergies or reactions to the proteins in the pollen that is coming out of the flowers, right?
That's right. And, our bodies, just like any kind of allergic reaction, we react to certain protein sequences called antigens. And some of the reactions are very severe. Some of them are a nuisance. I consider allergies more of a nuisance, but it's enough to make me want to take some medication and just get some relief.
For sure. So we wanted to talk a little bit today about a subject called growing degree days and how you can use them to help you understand how to prevent your annual lawn weeds, or to control pasture weeds for your annual pasture weeds, or how to protect your fruit trees from disease. So growing degree days, according to a publication from Ohio State, there are measurements of the growth and development of plants and insects during the growing season. So development doesn't occur unless the temperature is above a minimum threshold value, which is considered the base temperature. And that's going to vary for different organisms, plants, insects, and even different plants and insects. So the actual temperature that's experienced by an organism is influenced by several factors, which influence growth and development.
Yeah, so your growing degree days is going to be the max temperature plus the minimum temperature divided by 2. Well, that's called average, minus the base temperature. So if that average temperature is less than the base temperature, then you have 0 growing degree days. If the average temperature, so the max plus minimum divided by 2, is higher than the base temperature, you've gained certain degree days. But that base can vary. In some plants, it can be as low as 10. This is Fahrenheit. Some are 22, some are 32. Some of them are as high as 50. So when we talk about growing degree days, it seems to vary a little bit by species, but they're all going to be exposed to the same temperatures. But they're not all going to react to the environment at the same time, right?
Yeah, they're all going to react a little differently.
Because they have different base temperatures. That's why we have a calendar of blooms. That's why some things bloom earlier and some things bloom later. But growing degree days in agriculture is very important. In fact, in corn production, it is one of the most important factors as far as predicting harvest time and how well the crop's doing.
Right.
So if your grain degree days are really low in one year, well, you're going to predict probably either a later harvest or a smaller harvest. Because, if you don't get to a certain point at a certain time of the year, temperatures will tend to get cooler. And as they get cooler, those grain degree days are also going to get smaller. So the plant's not going to grow to its full potential.
Right. And, you also want to consider, I'm glad you brought up corn because with corn, you use modified growing degree days because there's an assumption saying that development doesn't take place beyond 86 degrees Fahrenheit. And so, therefore, whenever the temperature is higher than that, it just gets bumped back down. And so, your growing degree days is going to be a little bit different if you're using that modification. So, basically, if your minimum temperature is under 50, it gets pushed up to 50. If it's over 86, it gets pushed back down to 86. And so that's your modified growing degree days. And that's used for very specific crops like corn and very large commodity production.
Right.
There's also the sine wave method, which uses a lot of really amazing algebra. So, remember your algebra, kids. But that's considered to be the most accurate way to calculate growing degree days. And thankfully, we have some really great computer people out there that have decided that we don't need our farmers and our gardeners to have to do this really complex sine wave method. We're going to do it for them. And so you can go to a couple different websites to get it. And of course, we're focusing on the East Coast because that's where we're located. But you can go to a place called Climate Smart Farming, and it's a program out of Cornell University. And you can type in your location, and it will give you an approximation of the cumulative growing degree days at base 50. So that's pretty much a standard, and it does vary for some things, but it'll give you a really good idea across the board. So you can put in your location and get the number of cumulative growing degree days for your area, plus a prediction of what they think is going to come in the next 5-6 days. Now, if you want something that's going to give you real specific steps as far as what your disease management needs to be right now and what your risk is, then you're going to want to go to NEWA, newa.cornell.edu. And the NEWA program provides integrated pest management tools for crop production. So it gets much more specific. If you had a problem with apple scab last year, you can click apple scab and it'll tell you what the risk is right now, depending on the weather history. Now, this is great because it also pulls in the moisture content from the air. So if there's been rain, that significantly impacts. You can have a nice warm day with no rain and you're not going to have the chance of those fungal spores to spread. But if you have, a less warm day, but it's warm enough and you get that moisture in there, that's really going to increase your potential for infection. So it takes all of those things into account. If you know what your plants were suffering from last year, this website can help you predict when to apply what to protect your plants. So if you have fire blight issues, when do you apply your antibiotics? If you have apple scab, when do you apply your fungicides? And it's very helpful to predict when to do what and control your activities to the time period where they're going to have the greatest impact.
Yeah, and Ohio State does have a phenology calendar based on that growing degree day model, but Karen and I have been playing around with it. It's predicting a little bit higher. But I'll tell you what, Karen, I actually looked up last year's growing degree days at this time. So March 2nd, 2022. And this time last year, we had 32 growing degree days. But if we look at this year for 2023 today, it is saying that we are at 94.
Right. But for comparison's sake, Climate Smart Farming shows growing degree days at 13. So there's a pretty significant difference.
As far as my allergies go, it seems I'm going to side with the Ohio State calendar because let's just kind of look through and see what happens between 34 grain degree days and 94 grain degree days, which is what's being read right now. So the silver maples are one of the first blooms to happen. They happen at 34 grain degree days, according to the calendar here. Dogwood first blooms are at 40, silver maples at 42, the red maples. So the maples are kind of the first species to really get going when we're talking about warming up post winter, or right now in a mild winter setting. Let's see here. The forsythia first bloom happens at 58. And I have seen some forsythias bloom right now. So that is also a good indicator to put pre-emergent crabgrass control down if you so desire. A lot of people are starting to do that now because of forsythias. There is that relationship where just because the base temperature changes, if they are similar, because the species, there's going to be certain things that are similar and certain things that are going to be really different. And then there are things that are going to be close and just offset enough that'll give you good cues to do certain things, like putting pre-emergent down when you see the forsythias, because the crabgrass germination is soon to follow, according to growing degree days.
Right, and we've been getting questions from people on Japanese stiltgrass and joint head grass and when we need to put down pre-emergent herbicides for that. Now, again, pre-emergent means just that pre-emergent. Once those seeds have opened, it's too late to apply. So you have to get pre-emergent herbicides down before the seeds germinate. So for stiltgrass, for Japanese stiltgrass, you're looking at 51 to 112 growing degree days, according to some research that WVU Extension did the past couple years. And then joint head grass, you're looking at 88 to 125 growing degree days. And that's at base 50. And so for those of you who are like, I have no idea what this is, I don't care about that, just tell me what day it's going to germinate so I can get my stuff out before. According to the predictive maps that we're using in the Climate Smart Farming and NUA, we're looking at probably somewhere around April 5th that you're going to start seeing your stiltgrass germinate. And we're looking at probably April 13th for joint head grass. So you want to make sure by the time April Fool's Day gets here, you've got your pre-emergent herbicides out. In some locations, the forsythia is in full bloom. We've had plenty of growing degree days, so it's about to start germinating. You've got to get that out soon.
Yeah, it is location specific.
Very much so.
It's location specific to a certain point, and then things just kind of when it gets hot everywhere.
Right. But you got to think about how much sun does that particular area get. Japanese stiltgrass will grow in shaded areas. So how much sun is it getting? If it's getting more sun, it's going to germinate earlier. If it's getting less sun, it's going to germinate later. So you got to think about, are you on a north-facing slope or a south-facing slope? If you have your own weather station, you can do these calculations yourself based on your localized microclimate. These calculations are done on a very broad scale. It does not take into account anything like topology, elevation, things like that.
That's right.
So you need to make those adjustments for your location.
Like what you were just talking about, slope direction, whether it's south facing or north facing, that's going to make a difference because, those few degrees could be the threshold to either gain or not gain growing degree days. Wind is a big deal. So whether you're on the ridge or whether you're protected, trust me, I get a lot of wind. so it does make a huge difference.
It does.
And it's good to understand where the region is on an average, and you're going to be able to do a lot with that information. Don't get me wrong. You don't need to be super precise, but obviously having that precision can be beneficial. Especially like if I look up Columbus growing degree days using the Ohio State growing degree days phenological calendar here, Columbus is at 78 when St. Clairsville was at 94. So there's a difference there. And it is significantly higher than what we saw last year, because when I looked at the numbers last year, it was in the 30s. So last year about this time, I probably did not have the allergies that I have, because those growing degree days would not have triggered all the blooms in the maples.
Right.
And I'm blaming the maples right now for this stuffiness.
Yeah, and one of the things that we're talking about here is something called phrenology, the development of flowers and blooms and leaves on plants. And so there's actually an app you can use to track the phenology in your area, which is kind of fun to do. The National Phenology Network, or USANPN. You can input data or you can just see, well, how warm is it in my area? How quickly has spring arrived? Where are our growing degree days? That's another location you can go to find something a little bit slightly different information, such as, will the dogwoods be a good bloom this year? And so they're more focused on plant development, and you can use both together because you can use those plant signals to tell you about other things like insects. Has it been warm enough for, let's say, plum curculio to start hatching out? So when you're looking for that, you're looking at 215-degree days, but that's mostly connected to petal fall, which is a critical period of production when it comes to plum curculio. So may not necessarily be temperature related. It may be related to the stage of growth that your plants are in. And so you really want to track the date that your fruit trees get into silver tip when those buds just start feeling large and they're not really big, but they're just starting. And then green tip, where they're really getting big and they're going to open any day now. So those are really important dates to record on your calendar. And you can enter these dates into the NUA website to say, hey, I've already got full bloom here. So what should I be looking out for? Or I am at the pink stage. And knowing the different stages that your fruit trees are going to go into is going to be helpful too, because that is going to tell you a little bit more about your plant's development and what dangers could be available to it.
Yeah, I'm going to back to smooth crabgrass here because I actually found it on this calendar, and it says here that smooth crabgrass first seedling emergence at 155 growing degree days, right? So if we're back here at 94, we're still okay, but that's not a whole lot of time. And what you have to understand about the pre-emergent, um, it's going to keep the seed from germinating, but it's not just a matter of getting it down. You have to get it down, and you have to have a rain event. So rain will activate the pre-emergent. I might be off a little bit, but like a half inch to an inch of rain has to happen to fully activate the pre-emergent. I could be off a little bit, but let's just say not just a little drizzle, but an actual rain with accumulation has to happen to activate the pre-emergent. So not only do you have to make sure you get it down, but you have to make sure you have a significant rain event that will activate the pre-emergent to prevent the crabgrass seeds from blooming. Now, it's not just the crabgrass seeds, it'll actually prevent most seeds from blooming. I want to say all seeds, but it's never all anything. So really, crabgrass control will give you control of certain annual weeds as well. But just as an example, for crabgrass control, if we're at 94, abnormally warm, then we're not too far off for seedling emergence at 155. We're really not that far off. So it's time.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the NUA site and just trying to throw in some extra numbers. And when you look at the cumulative degree days, the accumulated degree days from January 1st to now, we're looking actually at 58, which means that stilt grass could be germinating in your area. So, maybe get out there and get that pre-emergent out there now too. But at the same time, there are certain things that don't start reacting until you get above a certain temperature.
And it's very specific to different crops, but you can still put them in chronological order as far as events happening. It's also dependent on whether the temperature warms up properly. If there's a max threshold, like you were talking about with corn. Here's another interesting one that I think Karen will appreciate. The spotted lanternfly, egg hatch, and first nymph is predicted to be at 200 growing degree days. So it's not too far off, right?
Yeah, so we typically look at April for that, but it could be much earlier this year. So I definitely would advise anyone who has any ailanthus or tree of heaven near them to go out and do some scouting, see if they can find those egg masses. If you're in an area where spotted lanternfly has not been confirmed, make sure that you take a picture and send it to your local Department of Agriculture or local APHIS office to show, "Hey, this is where it is, this is where I found it," and then smash them. Just smash those eggs, don't give them a chance.
Yeah, or scrape them. Yeah.
No, well, see, if you scrape them though, and they fall on the ground, they can still hatch. So scraping them 'em isn't good enough unless you're scraping them into a bottle with some rubbing alcohol. You have to either smash them or, you know, otherwise kill the eggs.
Yeah. So at 200, they hatch. So, what you've done at that point is you've actually prevented the introduction of the nymphs. And when things move, they tend to be harder to catch. Right?
Yeah, and, if you think about it, if you kill one adult, you kill, the ability of that adult to lay eggs. If you kill 100 eggs, you kill the ability of them to develop into 100 adults. So, there is a connection. You really do want to get out there and scout and take them down when you find them. Get rid of them. We definitely do not want this bug.
Yeah. This growing degree days, like it's a great garden calendar that has variation built into it based on abnormally cold or abnormally warm years. So it's very nice so calendars are great. And I think they're going to be the majority of the time fairly accurate. This is a little bit more accurate. And what Karen was saying is they can be very, very accurate depending on how precise your microclimate readings are going to be. So if you have a weather station on your farm, well, now you're very precise. If you're looking at the county level, that's better than looking at the state level. And looking at the state level is probably a little bit more accurate than looking at a garden calendar that basically takes yearly averages from past years and just kind of predicts what should be happening. So many tools, and anytime you use something that has some kind of research backing it's going to be good. But you can get very precise depending on how well you're tracking these growing degree days.
Right. So if you have questions about these growing degree day calculators or how to use them, or if there is a pest that you should be aware of at this point in time, or at any specific point in time, reach out to your local extension agent. They're going to know a lot more about your specific local climate than we would, depending on where you're located. I mean, if you're in Wheeling or St. Clairsville, you got a nice localized reflection of the weather. But if you are outside those areas, which we know a lot of you are, definitely pay attention to your weather stations and reach out to your local extension service for advice on when to apply pre-emergent herbicides, when to apply protection chemicals, things like that. And hopefully you'll have a great year. Hey friends, we need your help. In order to keep this show going, we need to hear back from you. Please take some time and check out our evaluation. You can either contact us directly for a copy, or you can go online to https://bit.ly/ here's the tricky part. Capitalize the next 3 words. Extension, calling, evaluation. Again, extension, calling, and evaluation all need to be capitalized. So bit.ly/extension, calling, evaluation. Let us know if you like the show, and especially let us know if you've used any of the information you've gained. Once again, you can reach us directly. You can call us at 304-234-3673. That's 304-234-3673. Or you can reach Dan at 740-695-1455. That's 740-695-1455. and let us know how you use the information that you get from this show, whether it is change in your shopping habits, a change in your gardening, or simply just expanding your mind. We want to know. Thanks again for tuning in. Give us your thoughts. Thank you so much for your time. If you'd like a written transcript of the show, please email me at Karen, Karen, .cox, COX, at mail, mail.wvu.edu, or call 304-234-3673. Thanks again for listening. Thanks for listening to Extension Calling. This show is a collaboration between OSU Belmont County Extension Educator Dan Lima and WVU Ohio County Extension Agent Karen Cox. If you'd like a transcript of this show, contact us at the office. Also, let us know if you enjoy the show by ranking us on your podcast app.